Jimmy in Iowa is calling. Jimmy's a theist. Pronouns are he, him. Says slavery in the Old Testament is not as bad as the hosts are letting on. Hey, Jimmy, welcome to the show. You're on with Darante and Matt.
So the main thing, I just wanted to explain how slavery in the Old Testament, in the Bible especially, you guys seem to make it out as a much worse concept than it actually is.
Can I ask you some questions?
Yeah.
Please.
Does the Bible allow you to own another person as property to be passed on to your children? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Okay. I've said that, and that's bad. Does the Bible allow you to beat your slaves as long as they don't die within a couple days?
Yes.
Does the Bible tell you when you must let your Jewish slaves go free, and that this does not necessarily apply to your non-Jewish slaves?
Yes.
Does the Bible tell you how to trick your Jewish slaves into being your slaves forever?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, it's at the beginning of Exodus 21. And it says, if you buy a Hebrew servant, then they'll serve for 6 years, but must be let go. And if he came in without a wife and kids, then he leaves without a wife and kids. But if he gets married while he's your slave, if you've given him a wife and they've born kids, the wife and kids remain with the slave owner, and the slave can exit and leave free. Well, but if he doesn't want to,
slave's choice.
Yeah, yes, that's the slave. Yes. Oh, this is going to go really fucking well. The slave can leave, or he can say, you know what? I don't want to leave my wife and kids. I'm willing to stay with my master. And then he becomes a slave for how long?
I believe it's 6 years or something. Or
forever. Forever.
Yeah.
It's 6 years and then forever. So this is what I've done. I've done a full 30-minute video going through everything the Bible says about slavery. We've talked about it on the show over all the time. That's all I've said about slavery in the Bible. How is it that you can call in and say, I'm making it sound worse than it is, when the Bible advocates owning people as property, passing them on as inheritance, beating them as long as they don't die quickly, and tricking them into being your slaves forever, has a different set of rules for Hebrew slaves than it does for Gentile slaves, and has a different set of rules for women and children who are slaves than for slaves? How exactly is your version of the Bible's slavery better than what I described?
Well, the first thing, can I go into the thing about marriage? The slave chooses to go back to being a slave. He could just leave his kids and have a normal life, and that's fine. That's up to him. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. Good job, Jimmy. I hope you never become a parent. Keep going.
Well, modern day, it wouldn't be good. You got to think about it from an old perspective.
I want to let you keep going, Jimmy. I want to let you keep going because this is fun. But right now I've been shielding you a little bit by trying to give you outs. And now you basically just said, hey, it's up to the slave. The slave can voluntarily stay a slave, and but he could leave his family and his family, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I'd like for you to keep going and explaining to my co-host how slavery in the Bible is not that bad.
Well, I just explained it, did I not?
No.
You did not. No. Actually, I have a question for you. When you say not that bad, what standard are you using?
The standards from an ancient agricultural society. There was no way to eat. There was no social structure that has been developed. The only way they could really have everyone able to eat and survive was to have slavery.
What time period?
Just before Christ.
Whoa, dude. Okay, hold on. Let's try this again. The time period that you're claiming that it was impossible to do life without slavery, what time period was that?
What? Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, the claim that you're claiming to know what was impossible to do during a certain time period. I'm asking you, when was that time period? Your first answer was just before Christ, which was like, wow. And so I'm giving you an opportunity to try again.
The Exodus time period.
Okay, so I'm going to skate past this really quick. The correct answer is you don't know. You want to try that?
No. It's like the Moses times,
When is Moses' time?
The time of Moses, they didn't have a calendar. Like they was just
We
when
we
Moses
have
was around,
calendars today. We know how to date. We know
Yeah,
how to date
but we
everybody
didn't
else.
have
So
them
so
back then,
so so
obviously.
so just to
So
be clear, you don't know which time period you're talking about, but you are making claims about things that you know that happened in that time period.
I told you the time period, did I not?
You did not. For some reason, you keep
I
thinking
did.
you're
I said the
saying
Moses
stuff that
time
you're
period.
not. Yeah, Moses never existed. The Exodus, there's no record of it. So that's why if you can give us a time and see, but the thing is, if
In
you knew the
6000
time period,
BC,
you'd
I guess.
already
I
know that.
mean,
So 6000 BC is when you're placing this at. That's correct?
yeah, sure.
And just to be clear, your answer was, I guess, which is a high
No,
flag,
I
but
mean,
you
yes,
literally just
I
pulled that
know.
number
I
out
know.
your
Sorry.
ass. Right. So, well, you don't know. I mean, like, you can change your words, but you just demonstrated to everybody that you really don't know what the hell you're talking about, which does make me think that you are a troll, because you started this conversation off by saying people are making slavery in the Bible sound worse than it was, but then your only argument is it was a
Well, you're
different
asking
time.
irrelevant questions to the topic. So really, I don't know what
Which
you
question was
expect me to do
irrelevant,
here.
Jimmy?
The date
Jimmy,
is
which question
irrelevant to
was
the
irrelevant?
argument.
Jimmy, which question was irrelevant? Let's see if you can do better
The,
with this question than you did with the time period. Which question was irrelevant, Jimmy?
I was just mainly talking about the time period. I defended most
Jimmy,
other
which
arguments, I
question?
believe.
Which question is irrelevant?
But when you asked me what time it was, it's the time of Moses.
Okay, but because you claim to know what's going on during that time period, but then you don't
Yeah,
even
I
know.
don't know
It's
the
like
time
saying
period, but I do know what's
it's
going
like
on.
saying you, Jimmy, hush while I'm
Yeah?
talking. It's like
Oh,
you
okay.
saying you know what's happening at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and you don't even know where Kentucky
Oh,
Fried
I
Chicken
don't go to
is.
Kentucky Fried
You've never
Chicken.
been there.
Yeah, I don't
But
go
that's
there.
exactly
Yeah,
what
I
you're
haven't.
doing. Right.
Jimmy,
All right.
Jimmy,
So, yes.
I'm pretty convinced that Jimmy is a troll, and we're just waiting around to get to the punchline.
Yep.
Jimmy, are you suggesting that there was a point in history where slavery was basically the only option?
Absolutely, because they can't
Cool.
eat. They have to be slaves
Hang
in order
on,
to eat.
Jimmy, if I'm a property owner and I go out and buy slaves and have them work for me, why couldn't I just pay them by giving part of the proceeds of the work?
Because how could you pay for food if you couldn't eat? Like that's not how it works.
Jimmy, if I have a farm and I have two choices. I can either buy a slave to work that farm, or I can hire someone to work that farm and pay them from part of the work they do. Why is
Well,
slavery the only option?
if the farm is in an ancient agricultural society, then it's obviously the only option. I mean, there's
Okay,
no way for
we're now
people to
done
eat.
with you, Jimmy. You're not even going to get to do your punchline, because I recognize your voice. You are not sincere, and you don't know how to argue and will not argue sincerely, because Darante and I are doing our best to try to take this seriously, despite the fact that it's disgusting and stupid. But when somebody
Oh,
says
man.
it's just obviously wrong, you are not ready to have discussions on programs like this or anywhere else. And so when you learn how to actually argue and make a case for something, then you can call us back. But that won't be today. So goodbye, Jimmy.
Bye-bye.
I really like to
I,
get sincere callers. I know we're going to get trolls. I know people are going to say so. And it's really easy to do that. And
yeah.
that clip's going to get clicks and it's going to be fine. But I don't want
Oh,
to just
yes.
get clicks off of bullshit. So
Yeah.
let me add a
Yeah.
little something here. Anyone who actually thinks that slavery was necessary or a good thing not only doesn't have a good enough understanding, and you're basically saying, "Ooh, back in those days, that's just the way it had to be." No, it wasn't. At any time, someone could come by my property and say, "Hey, I'm poor, I'm broke, I
Yeah.
have no options, I have no food. How about I do a day's work in exchange for sharing your evening meal?"
Yeah.
That's step one. That happens all over the place throughout history. It is perfectly viable. And if I don't have enough food to share, then that also means I don't have enough money to buy slaves.
Yes. Oh, man.
But if somebody comes up and says, "Hey, if I do a day's work can I eat dinner with you? That's not slavery. You know what that is? That's a job. And it's just that instead of using fake ass pieces of paper that represent some abstract currency somewhere, or digits in a computer, or coins, we're bartering. Hey man, I found this chicken over here. I don't have any way to start a fire and prep it, and I don't know how to do it, but I hate for it to go to waste. How about I give you the chicken and you prepare it for both of us and we share a meal? Now, I've provided part of it by supplying the ingredients. You supplied part of it by doing the work. This is how civilization was built. This is how monetary systems are built. And this is how slavery is never the best option. But even in some fictional fantasy scenario that you could find, where slavery is somebody's absolute best option, that doesn't justify it as a system. It doesn't justify it in our history. It doesn't justify it in broader circumstances. And if you believe in the Bible and the God of the Bible is wise and good, then the God of the Bible, when he was writing down the commandments, should have said, thou shalt not own people as property. If he can say, don't eat shellfish, don't wear mixed fabrics, he can say, don't fucking own people. And yes, God could say fucking own, and every believer would be like, yes, sir.
That's right.
It's just ridiculous.
You know, I just want to add to that. If slavery was the only option, then there would be only slaves. So I don't know why anybody ever makes that argument. Like the only way slavery exists is that there is another option and someone else has taken it and is capitalizing off of other folk.
Yep. Yeah. I think there's some concepts that we're going to need to hash out on some calls. There's a video that's not out yet on my channel, but it's coming out this month about how to evaluate candidate explanations. You have some observed phenomenon, and then what you need to do is make a list of all the candidate explanations that you know of, and any possible candidate explanations that we might also need to explore.
Yes.
In ethics, there are a few principles, like Rawls' veil of ignorance. Design the system you are willing to live in, not knowing who you will be in that system. So design the rules for the game, not knowing which player you're going to be in the game. Because if you design a system that allows slavery, are you willing to live in a system that allows slavery if you might be the slave? You know, you could be. And it turns out that veil of ignorance is just a brilliant utility. But the other thing, when you're coming up with the ethical systems, one of the things is to ask if the base assumptions that someone has made are even true. In ancient times, there really wasn't any other choice than to become a slave. Well, that's not true. There was indentured servitude, which I say is immoral.
Yes.
But that's still distinct. And so when Christian apologists or Bible apologists start to talk about slavery, one of the lines is, the Bible's talking about indentured servitude. No, it's absolutely not. But even if it were, that would still be immoral. Indentured servitude does not include, they are your money, they shall be your inheritance to pass on to your children. That's not how indentured servitude works. And also, indentured servitude doesn't start with an instruction to buy your slaves from the heathen that surround you.
Right.
Indentured servitude doesn't have a different set of rules for your fellow Jews than it does for everybody else. So, but even if it were indentured servitude, it would still be immoral. So if you're going to come up with a way to make, if the Bible says something that's problematic, it is probably far better to just say, that's what it says. I don't understand it. I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm waiting for God to change my mind and my heart about it. That would be way better than for a dumb fucking white guy to call in and talk about how slavery wasn't as bad as the host make it out. It's just,
oh man, the South will rise again. Oh my.